a little off screen. There we go. What's good, everybody? Take it easy back here. Jumping into the NBA offseason here once again. Today we're going to talk about the overall Apron teams, what I think they're going to do in the offseason. So we're talking about Oklahoma City, who is $28 million over the Apron. Cleveland Cavaliers, who are slightly over the second apron, and then the teams that are pretty close as well. Denver is $10 million over the first apron. They only got $2.5 million in room below the second apron. Orlando's more or less in the same spot there, and then the Kings are flirting with it, and the Pelicans are flirting with it. We might jump into them. They might make the next video. I promise I'm not going to talk about the Wolves in every video I do, but I did forget to do one part I wanted to do with the Wolves, which I want to do with every team. I just know the Wolves roster like by heart and their cap situation, so I just jumped into it rather than explaining it. But I do want to do like a roster rundown quickly on each team. So we'll knock the Wolves out since we talked about them last video. 9 players under contract right now. They got a few free agents here, most notably Ayo Dosunmu. Jalen Clark, Mike Conley, Kyle Anderson, Bones Highland, Joe Ingles might all come back in somewhere. Not Ingles, he already signed with an Australia team. But the other guys might all come back. They're all around minimum contracts, so it would just be a matter of if they have the roster space or not. Right now, they're $16 million under the first apron, $29 million under the second. I think Ayo Dosunmu is probably going to command about like $17 million-ish a year. That would get you up to 12 players, given the way the roster, or no, it would get you up to 10 players. Up into the way the roster is currently constructed, you got to get at least 4 more. So you're talking 4 minimums. That's roughly like $10 million. So if you're adding 17 plus 10, that gets you like right below the second apron. I think that's what's going to ultimately happen, along with like the trades we discussed. But any trade the Wolves do, they're not going to take on salary. They're probably going to shed a little bit of salary to give themselves a little bit of wiggle room. They'd like to stay under the first apron if possible. I just don't think that's really possible. All right, so that's it for the Wolves. So let's jump right into the Thunder. The Thunder are playing the Spurs tonight in Game 6 of the Western Finals. I think they're going to win. I think they're probably winning the title whether they win tonight or not. I don't think the Knicks are going to be able to get in their way very much. So we're talking about a team that's going to go back-to-back in titles without being a second apron team. So they could, in theory, just run it back. You can be in the second apron 1 year, like I said in the first video. You just don't want to like repeat in the second apron. But because Oklahoma City is a small city franchise, small market, that's the term, and they're kind of stingy with paying the tax. They paid the tax sometimes, but their tax bill, you can see here they're $49 million over the tax, which means it accelerates, which means their tax bill is probably going to be like $150 to $200 million, given the way the roster is constructed right now. Which means they're going to shed some money. So if we look at their roster right now, they have 15 players rostered, and they have 3 fairly lucrative draft picks. Sorry for the scrolling here; it doesn't quite mirror my screen, so I gotta get used to what's what. So they have the 12th pick, which is a $6 million player, the 17th pick, which is like a $4.5 million player, and the 37th overall pick, which is going to be closer to like a minimum salary. Oh, I know what you're doing, Zelda. You're trying to eat Lincoln's food. So those 3 players, they probably want to roster. They want to at least roster their 2 first-round picks. So that's at least another 10 to like 12 million in salary. So even though it's showing us 28 million over, really they're 40 million over, and they got to create 3 roster spots. So what are the paths for them to do that? So if we look at their roster, these salaries in red are club options or team options. So Hartenstein, Lou Dort, they could decline. They already got the 40 million there. They also have Kendrick Williams at 7 million that they could decline. So they could just do that. I don't think they're going to want to get rid of Hartenstein. I think he's too valuable. This is the last year of his contract, so they can extend him to a more reasonable number. They had to overpay him in free agency under the old system, but now under the apron system, I don't think he can command this much on the open market. But he's very valuable for them, so I could see them giving them an extension for like 3 for $60, something like that. I do think Lou Dort will be gone, but I think Lou Dort has trade value. And then you have guys like Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins right below him that have kind of already been replaced in the rotation by Jared McCain and AJ Mitchell. You also have their two last first round picks, both who haven't played, in Nikola Topic and Thomas Sorber. Not huge salaries, about the same salaries of the guys they're drafting this year. You just start to wonder now. I believe Topic is the one that's been on the team for 2 years now. Do they just try to trade him and use that roster spot? Or you could do the real asset accumulation move. Why is it not scrolling on here? And trade Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams has missed most of the playoffs this year. And they're going to win the title anyway. So, you could trade Jalen Williams and just acquire the most assets possible. I don't think they really need to do that because they have other guys that they can trade. So, we're talking about probably what you want to do to get to $40 million. I can't tell when this doesn't scroll. Oh, now it's not mirroring. That might be a problem for this video. So, I think ideally what they would want to do is they would want to dump Lou Dort, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, and Kendrick Williams. I think they could probably get positive value for all those guys. You don't want to really take back any salary is the only tricky thing. Maybe like a minimum, and then draft the replacements. Right now they got 3 draft picks. We'll see what they end up with. So what is the main route they can do that here? I am going to have to unshare and reshare. I'm not sure why this froze. Yeah, can I do that in the video? This might get tricky here. Let's see. Maybe if I turn it off and then back on. Okay. Hopefully that saves it. Okay, good. We'll see how long that lasts this time. So let's look at trade exceptions. I think this is the easiest path here. So how do you get a trade exception in the NBA? It's when you trade a player and don't take the salary back. So like Jaren Jackson got traded to Utah. Memphis used their own trade exceptions to essentially open up a $28 million exception. You can also do it somewhat. Sorry, the dogs are being weird. You can do it somewhat if you send out a player like they sent out Jaren Jackson, who I think is like $35 million, and took back like $7 million. So the trade exception is the difference. The Celtics have a $27 million exception from the Anthony Simons trade where they traded required Vucevic. Dallas got one for Anthony Davis. And then I think Chicago can also fit Lou Dort in theirs with the Kevin Huerter. And then there's a few others here which could acquire Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins or Kendrick Williams, but they can't quite fit the Lou Dort contract in. So Miami's got 16. Washington and the Pelicans both got 13. Atlanta's got an 11. Minnesota's got a 10.7, and so on. So if we pull up the trade machine, what exactly can the Thunder get here? So another thing they could do is trade it into cap space. You can also trade your mid-level exceptions as a trade exception. It's about $15 million. So again, pretty much any team could get Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins, but it's a little trickier to pull off getting Lou Dort. So the other thing you can do is cap space. Brooklyn and Memphis are the main 2 cap space teams. The Pistons can create cap space, but I don't think it's really a smart move for them to do that, to clear space. And the Lakers can also create cap space. And their path is a little more forward. When Yossi Goslin did his third Apron video on the Lakers, he had them acquiring Lou Dort into cap space. So let's do something a little different. And I like the idea of the Celtics getting Lou Dort, and then I also like the idea of the Mavericks using their trade exception. The Mavericks need some guards to pair with Cooper Flag. So if we throw this in here, the trade machine, Lou Dort can go to the Celtics on the exception. I should have made a third team for Kendrick Williams. I'm not sure who would really want Kendrick Williams, but he's a serviceable vet. So just for simplicity's sake on this video, we're going to send him to Boston as well. I don't think Boston would actually do that because it's going to push them into the aprons. I'm not sure if it's even going to let me do it here. He was supposed to go to Dallas, and Lou Dort was supposed to go to Boston. So what I'm going to do in this trade scenario here is I'm going to swap the 37 pick and the 12th pick with Dallas. Might be a little too rich for Dallas. Dallas is going to send back the 9th and the 30th to OKC. And then Boston is going to send over the 27th pick to OKC. Dallas and Boston have to trade, technically, to make this work. So they'll send that. So let's have this actually go to Boston. So yeah, so Boston can't actually do Kendrick Williams. That's what I thought. So we'll take Kendrick Williams off for now. He's going to have to go to a fourth team. Let's just throw a fourth team in here, just for the sake of getting it all in one trade here. So who would need a serviceable bench big? Let's just send him to the Bulls, because the Bulls have a bevy of second round picks, and the Bulls also probably want some veteran leadership. So the Bulls will send, let's just pick some random seconds here that they can send to OKC. And then they will send this pick. OKC is going to send the 12 back to Dallas. Actually, let's send this to Dallas as a little sweetener, because Dallas is giving up a top 10 pick. Send that to OKC. No, this to, yeah, that to OKC. And 37 to Boston. And then Lou Dort to Boston, Isaiah Joe to Dallas, Wiggins to Dallas, and Kendrick Williams to Chicago. Chicago needs to send or receive something from Boston. So let's see. What would they do here? Oh, this could be... Nah, that doesn't really make sense. We'll send this to Dallas, and Dallas can send them their second. Alright, so let's make it all fit over here. So this would be a trade, a 1-14 trade that gets OKC all the way under the tax. Or not under the tax, all the way under the second apron. Gives them room to sign their rookies, and they would be just a hair under the second apron, which may still be a little rich for them. So the Celtics get Lou Dort for the price of moving down 10 spots in the draft, taking on that salary. So they move from the 27th pick to the 37th pick. The Bulls get Kendrick Williams. They move up slightly, 8 picks in the second round this year, but they send out a couple seconds to OKC. So to move up 8 picks in the second round, they get Kendrick Williams and give up 2 future seconds. The Mavericks acquire Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins. Theirs is a little more complicated. They're sending the 9th pick overall to OKC, getting back the 12th pick. For their troubles, they're also moving up 3 picks from their second pick. The 30th pick goes to OKC, and the 27th pick goes to Dallas. And then I also had Dallas moving down 8 picks in the second round from 48 to 56. So they did 2 trade downs, 1 trade up. It might be a little too rich. Maybe you want 1 more second. OKC or Chicago would throw that in. But essentially, you do a little finagling in the draft. And then the Thunder, they send all those guys out, get $45 million in space to move up a couple picks. They move up from 12 to 9 and from 37 to 30. They pick up 2 future seconds as well. So they're not really getting much back, but they're getting a little bit back. expanding their war chest a little bit, getting under the second apron pretty comfortably. The other thing you could do, I haven't really explored a Jalen Williams trade, but you could potentially trade Jalen Williams, like I said. That would be tricky. Let's see. Let's try to do like an Atlanta trade, and then Brooklyn can pick up the pieces from Atlanta. See if we can throw one together here real quick. Atlanta will be involved in the next team as well. That's why Atlanta's on my mind. So we're going to send Jalen Williams to Atlanta. And Atlanta is going to send out Kuminga to go to Brooklyn. And they would have to send Kispert to Brooklyn and probably Ricochet to Brooklyn. And then the 8th pick will go to OKC. The 23rd pick will go to OKC. Milwaukee's pick next year will go to OKC. And then we'll also throw in the 29 Atlanta pick. So Brooklyn is going to renounce some players. They got to send something out. So they're going to also send the Knicks first rounder next year to OKC. So where does that put us? So that is too much money. So Ricochet can stay. We'll keep Kispert. Kispert's the least attractive player there. They keep Kispert. The Nets got to send a little bit of money out in this scenario. So maybe the Nets trade back Ben Serif to Atlanta. Would that work? Yeah, that's still too much. Drake Powell to Atlanta. So let's try to send. They can't reacquire him. All right. I mean that's okay. I don't think they really love either of those guys. They probably would need a little bit more though. So Atlanta's gonna have to kick in. Let's see. Let's send the 33 to OKC, and they're going to get the 23 pick from Brooklyn. Brooklyn doesn't really need more rookies is the problem. So I don't know how well this works. So Jalen Williams goes to Atlanta. Atlanta gets 2 of Brooklyn's rookies from this year just to make salary cap matching here. Drake Powell, Ben Serif. I think those were 2 of their 3rd and 4th first round pick. I think they liked Danny Wolf, which is why I kept Danny Wolf. The Nets move up 10 spots in the draft to absorb Ricochet and Jonathan Kuminga. They can re-extend Kuminga, lower his number a little bit. Technically, they couldn't as a player option, but they could extend him. And then the Thunder do the same thing here. They clear $40 million. They add the 8th pick this year as well as the 33rd pick, which is probably too much. They would still need to trade some players out because now the Thunder would have the 8th pick, the 12th pick, the 17th pick, the 33rd pick, and the 37th pick. So they wouldn't really be able to do this in one move, I think, to really make it work. You could potentially maybe like rope in Memphis. Maybe Memphis would have made more sense. Let's see if I can whip one up real fast with Memphis to get the 3rd pick from Memphis, which they probably wouldn't want to give up, but it at least makes it a little more enticing. I think it makes a little more sense for everybody. So again, I did the wrong year. You gotta always change it to the current year on Spotrac, so I mess this up all the time. I said Atlanta and we said Memphis. So the 8th pick is going to go to Memphis, as well as the 23rd pick probably still goes to OKC. And then Kuminga to Memphis, Ricochet to Memphis. Memphis is also a salary cap team, that's why I wrote them in, but Memphis has the 3rd pick. So my thought process there is they could get the 8th and 12th pick in this deal. Let's see if they renounce people. What does that get us? Not quite there. Okay, so they would have to still send out a little bit of salary here. So one of the things with Memphis, that's kind of like the elephant in the room, is the unfortunate passing of Brandon Clark. His salary is most likely going to come off the books. Memphis is already a salary cap team. It hasn't come off the books yet, so it's just like a lingering like 12.5 million in the salary. I don't know exactly how much salary cap room they have, so let's see if we can piece it together without throwing that in. That still fails. Okay. Oh, you know what I did wrong here is I can acquire Kaminga with the trade exception, and then it will work. It still won't work. All right, so we'll have to trade Brandon Clark, and then all right. So this one's just not really going to work technically. The way the rosters are currently set up because of the Brandon Clark scenario. But the idea here, and let's just to make this clean. This can also go to Memphis. No, they wouldn't want that. This can go to Atlanta. And Atlanta will throw back, like I said, that Milwaukee pick. They'll throw in their 29 pick here. So I think this would actually work, but because of the Brandon Clark scenario, it's not going to work in the trade machine. But the Atlanta would give up the 8th pick, the 23rd pick, next year's swap with Milwaukee and New Orleans. Or no, they just get the lesser of Milwaukee and New Orleans. I think they still owe San Antonio a first-round pick from the DeJounte Murray trade, maybe. And then their 29th pick would go to OKC. Their 2029 would also go to OKC. So they're sending 4 first-round picks in total out for Jalen Williams, along with Ricochet and Kaminga. The Grizzlies would absorb Kaminga's contract with the Jaren Jackson trade exception, take in Ricochet under salary cap. You might have to do that as 2 separate trades, technically. They have the salary cap for Ricochet no matter what, and Kaminga could go into that trade exception. They're having to give up the 3rd overall pick, which might be a little rich, but they're getting back the 8 and 12. So maybe the Thunder would have to throw in a pick as well. Let's throw that in. They will throw in this Denver pick and this Spurs pick. So they can give them 2 more first. They can give them the Denver and the San Antonio first. Don't know that would necessarily sweeten the deal, but they're getting 4 first-round picks for the 3rd overall pick. That might entice them a little bit. You could maybe even throw in like this 27 pick if you really want it. The idea here is that the Thunder clear that Jalen Williams spot and get the 3rd pick out of it. So they would have the 3rd pick, the 17th pick, and the 23rd pick in this year's draft. So again, the 3rd pick would replace Jalen Williams. They would have 2. That's also why I put in Memphis here, as I was going to send Kendrick Williams and send Scottie Pippen and Kendrick Williams to. Oh wait, Scottie Pippen's on Memphis. Send Kendrick Williams to Memphis, and maybe in this scenario, because we're trying to sweeten it for Memphis, we'll send them actually Nikola Topic and Thomas Sorber. So they get OKC's last 2 first-round picks, the 8th pick, the 12th pick, and 2 future picks for the 3rd pick. OKC clears $51 million to get the 3rd overall pick. So now they're CLAP compliant. They traded Jalen Williams, but they keep the rest of their depth. That's won them the title this year. I think that makes a little more sense. We figured it out as we went. All right, that's enough Thunder talk. So next up, the 2nd highest payroll right now is the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers not doing as well as the Thunder. They unceremoniously got swept in the Eastern Finals Not too fun for them. So they right now are at 11 rostered players. They are just over the second apron. They're 21 million over the tax, 13 million over the first apron. This is including James Harden's player option, the 42 million, which he can opt out of and sign an extension. James Harden is known for kind of signing under the table deals. That's why he was rumored to want out of the Clippers and went to Cleveland. So it sounds like they probably have something agreed to already. I would guess it's probably like 2 years, 60 million in that range. Maybe a little more, 2 years, 70, which would lower his cap hit like 7-8 million. Maybe as much as 10 million because of the 8% increase year over year. Which again probably have a player option the second year. So that would get you under the second apron. Let's say he gives them a full 10%. It's 32 this year, 35 next year. So 2 years, 67 million is his extension. You get them 10 million under. There's still 3 million over the second, or there's 3 million over the first apron, but they got like 9 million ish under the second apron. They still got to sign 3 guys, including Dean Wade as a potential free agent if they wanted to bring him back. Larry Nance, Thomas Bryant, Keon Ellis, they potentially want to sign and bring back, and then they have the 29th pick, which is a $3 million salary if they keep it, which means you probably still have to let Dean Wade or Keon Ellis go. Keon Ellis kind of flamed out in the playoffs a bit, so you can maybe get him at something like 5-6 million. But also you just know this team isn't good enough. So I don't think you really want to run it back, even if you can bring it back under the second apron. So we got to look at some trades. So what do you do? They're one of the rumored Giannis trades, which would mean you're trading out Evan Mobley. You can't combine salaries when you're over the second apron. Like I said, James Harden should sign an extension, opt out of his player option, sign an extension, which should get them under the second apron, where technically they could combine salaries. But Cleveland just doesn't have many picks. If we pull them up here on the trade machine, just to look real quick, I'm just going to throw any team in here. The Bucks are right underneath them, so that's fitting. If we look at Cleveland's draft capital here, they have the 29th pick this year. They don't have their 27 pick. They don't have their 29 pick. They have their 31 pick that they could trade. And I'm not 100% sure if they can trade their 2033 or not. I'm not sure which pick got frozen from being over the second apron this year. I think it's the 23rd pick. And then they have the 2023 second rounder. So they could trade the 29th overall pick this year, their 31st, and a second. Is really the only draft capital they have. So you would just have to assume Milwaukee would be in on Evan Mobley because it's just tough to really piece anything else together. So we could do a quick Giannis trade just to see what it looks like. I'm going to just do them straight up. I'm not sure what third teams because I'm not sure exactly what all Milwaukee and Cleveland have to send out to make this work. They will technically be over the second apron in this trade scenario. I don't think I can decline James Harden's option in this scenario, so I have to do it as a second apron team, which makes it a little tricky. So let's just see what it looks like here. Milwaukee wouldn't mind taking back money, so I think it's easy to give them a little bit more money just to make this trade work. So Strus isn't expiring. I think that's probably most likely what they would want. They could also maybe want Jalen Tyson, who looked decent for them in the playoffs. That's just not enough salary, so let's stick with Strus for now. And let's see, what could they potentially take back? That's probably what it would be. All right, so let's just keep it simple. We'll send them the 29. We'll send them the 31, and then we'll give them these swaps here. They can have this swap too. Not that this swap would do anything. So this is probably just about the best offer Cleveland can do. So to get Giannis, they give up Mobley, Strus, and all the tradable picks they have So they give up the swap in 2032, 2030, 2030, 2028. Utah has first rights on that, 2028. So there's almost no way that 2028 would convey, but you might as well just give it up because it's not really going to have much value regardless. Because you can just endlessly swap that. Having Milwaukee attached as a three-way swap doesn't really hurt the trade value for Cleveland, and it doesn't really hold much value for Milwaukee, but there's the off chance that it does. 29th pick's not really anything, but if the Bucks are rebuilding, any young cost-controlled player is nice. The 32 swap is the one swap that maybe can turn into something, as well as the 31 first rounder. But really, you're just banking on Evan Mobley being your potential future star. And you would roll with if you're Cleveland, you would roll with Giannis, James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen. You might still trade now that you have Giannis. Try to get back more role players. You could trade Jared Allen to a team like the Lakers or the Hornets, maybe Atlanta. Try to get back some spacing and just role players because right now you got Mitchell, Giannis, Harden, Dennis Schroeder, Sam Merrill, Jalen Tyson, and that's really your whole roster. You could try to bring back Dean Wade. You could try to bring back Keon Ellis, but you're also running really close to the first apron, and because you have to combine salaries, you can't go past the first apron if you're Cleveland, which means you have to keep your payroll. That's the wrong back arrow. This means you have to keep your payroll under $222 million. So you're getting up close with it right away. So I think what Cleveland should actually do. I've asked a couple Cleveland fans on the Discords, and they both told me the same thing, that they'd like to see Donovan Mitchell traded. Guards are so plentiful in the NBA, it's hard to always really figure out where you could send a guard to, and it makes sense. But I think, like we did Jalen Williams, Atlanta is a team that makes a lot of sense. We could try to do a Detroit trade as well. Maybe we'll try Detroit after this. After that, it gets pretty hard to really find a landing spot for Donovan Mitchell that makes sense, because if you're trading a lot for Mitchell, you want to be close to contention. We can maybe try Houston as well. Let's try Houston, actually. I just thought of that one. Let's see what that looks like first. Oh, the Bucks aren't supposed to be in here. So let's do Cleveland and Houston. We'll explore all three of these to see if I could quickly put them together here. Donovan Mitchell to Houston to pair with Durant. Or maybe you just get Durant back. Because they need to clear $50 million here. So you would probably get Jabari back. You probably want to get Reed Tom Shepard back. I guess you probably would want Jabari. And then you're $15 million short here, so they got to send out another 6. So you could just get Dorian Finney-Smith. I think he's an expiring contract. And then they could give you Brooklyn's pick. They give you Phoenix's pick. Is this a swap? Okay, so they technically would need to keep their 28 in that scenario. They give you Dallas's pick. Two most favorable of Brooklyn, Dallas, Phoenix to Houston. So they could trade all these, though. So in this scenario, let's see. That might be a little rich. Let's see what we're looking at here. So Donovan Mitchell going to Houston. Cleveland will get back Jabari Smith, Reed Shepard, Dorian Finney's expiring. They would get back 4 first-rounders. Brooklyn, Phoenix in 27. And then the 2 best of Dallas, Phoenix, and Houston in 29. The Rockets would get Donovan Mitchell. So the Rockets would have Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Durant, Şengün, Fred VanVleet, Steven Adams, Ahmed Thompson, Clint Capella, J.D. Davidson. They would have to re-sign Tari Eason. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that is an 8-man rotation. Capella, Steven Adams as your centers. Şengün, as probably your starting power forward, Durant as your small forward, Fred Van Vliet, Thompson, and Mitchell as your backcourt, and then Tari Eason as your backup wing as well. That's pretty good. That might make a lot of sense, actually. And Houston has a decent amount of draft capital, so they would have no picks in 27, no picks in 29, but they would control the rest of their picks after that. They have the 39 and 59, 39 and 53 this year to fill out the back end of their roster. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they would only be at 8 players at that point in time. Where is their salary at right now? Must have missed them. So Houston right now is at 187. So that put them at 189. Tari Eason's probably about 20 million, so that's 209. They're already at the first apron, so they might not be able to keep Tari Eason if they were to do this, depending on what his market is. But you could trade Tari Eason, get back some salaries. You could also try to get off of Şengün's contract or Steven Adams' contract. They would definitely have options here. I like this a lot. I didn't expect that to work so well, but I think that might be the winning Donovan Mitchell trade. Let's try Atlanta here. See what Atlanta can conjure up. So Atlanta could give up, let's see, Kuminga's probably not super valuable. What would they want here? Ricochet is always the easy one to trade. You get the 8 and the 23. You get the Milwaukee first. And then Atlanta's first and 29. They would have to send another 27 out. So you would probably want Nikhil, I'm guessing, here. And then maybe Cody Kespert also, just to make the salaries work. You could go a Kongwu, but you'd still have Mobley and Jared Allen in this case. So in this scenario, I forgot to look at Cleveland under that Houston trade, so I might whip that up real fast just to look at Cleveland's lineup. You'd have Evan Mobley, James Harden, Jared Allen, Max Schroeder, Sam Merrill, Jalen Tyson, Nikhil, Kespert, Ricochet. So and Ricochet probably would start in your rotation along with Tyson, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that would be your 9-man rotation. You could potentially still bring back Dean Wade or Keon Ellis. You probably wouldn't want to bring back both because you're already at a 9-man rotation. You might not want this Kespert contract. Could we take on Kuminga and still make the money work somehow? Maybe if we send Schroeder back, they could take on Kuminga instead of Kespert. That would still work. So Atlanta would take on 12 million. Where's Atlanta? Oh, Atlanta's still got a low payroll, so that's fine. They wouldn't care about that at all. So Cleveland would have Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Ricochet, and Kuminga, along with the 8 and 23 this year, and then the lesser of Milwaukee and New Orleans in 27, as well as Atlanta's unprotected 29. The Hawks would get Donovan Mitchell and Dennis Schroeder. So the Hawks would have Mitchell, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu, and who is their 5th starter in that case? Okongwu, Dyson, and I guess Schroeder he'd probably still start, with Kespert, Buddy Hield, Newell, Mo Gay off the bench. Who are their free agents? Would you want to bring back McCollum still at that point? This would be tricky for Atlanta. because they wouldn't have the full lineup. They would, but they would still have their mid levels and everything, so they could make it work. You get the number one to pair with Jalen Johnson, who are both kind of more 2As, I think. But you potentially get to make some noise if you're Cleveland. You have Mobley, Jared Allen, with Kuminga off the bench as your backup big. James Harden, Nikhil Alexander was your starting backcourt, and then you would have Reese Shea, Max Strus, Sam Merrill as your wings. You'd have Jalen Tyson as a backup. Guard as well. So you'd have a lot more depth. You wouldn't have the top end talent. And then who was the third team I was talking? Oh, I didn't talk about what Cleveland would have in the Houston scenario. So let's run that back without picks real fast just to see what it looks like. I had them getting Jabari, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Reed for Mitchell. So you would be very big here in this scenario with Cleveland because you would probably start Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and Jabari Smith with James Harden. And then you don't necessarily have to start Reed Shepherd, but you could start Reed Shepherd, Sam Merrill, or Jalen Tyson. You'd still have Dennis Schroeder as well. Dorian Finney-Smith would be your backup wing. His second year on this contract is not guaranteed. You have plenty of money to bring back. Maybe not plenty of money to bring back Dean Wade, but you would be at 3, 4, 5, 6. You'd be at 14 players plus your draft pick. So you wouldn't have a roster spot for Dean Wade without another move, or Keon Ellis. I guess you could waive some of these minimum players if you wanted to. You'd have more of an identity, I think, with this Houston trade, but maybe Atlanta can offer a little bit more. And then Detroit, I don't think can really even match that, but let's just see what we can put together with Detroit. And I think Detroit would have to send Osir Thomas to even make this make sense. But it's just a lot of bigs and a lot of like minimum salary, so you'd have to really like Detroit's picks. But I like the Houston move. I think is the one there. Next up is the Nuggets. Where am I at time wise? I can't see my clock on here. Oh goodness, I'm already at 42 minutes. Shit. Alright, let's see if we can run through these fast. So, I'm going to do Orlando real fast because I was looking at them more today. So, I should be able to speed through this. The Magic have $3.5 million in second apron space. They're 9.3 over the first apron. They have 12 players on their roster right now, so they can't get to a legal roster under the current construction. Jet Howard and Mo Wagner are free agents as well, and they have the 46th pick in the draft, so that's not a guaranteed contract. The easiest way out of this is Jonathan Isaac has a $14.5 million contract where only $8 million is guaranteed, so they could clear $6.5 million by just waiving him. You could also stretch him, which would make it be like a $2 million cap hit over 7 years because the void years would still count in the stretch. So when you stretch someone, you get to double their contract length plus a year. Jonathan Isaac has 2 more years on his contract, but because only $8 million is guaranteed, what's the money in the second and third year doesn't actually matter. So you'd stretch $8 million over 7 years, and I think either the stretch you have to pay it as a minimum contract, or you have to include like the minimum amount of money as if it's a 3-year contract. So like $8 million this year, and then a minimum contract in year 2 and 3, which makes it about $2 million a year over 7 years, which would clear $12.5 million. That's most likely what they're gonna do, but that doesn't really help them all that much long term. So they have 4 big contracts, right? They have Franz, Paulo, Desmond Bain, and Jalen Suggs. And then Wendell Carter's on a reasonable $18 million. But Paulo's probably should still be your center of the future. You also have Gogo Batazia as a $7.6 million center. You also maybe want to bring back Mo Wagner as Franz's older brother. So I think you could get a cheaper center than Wendell Carter. So that was the trade I explored earlier today. So I want to get Day'Ron Sharpe from Brooklyn. And if I'm Minnesota, I want Wendell Carter. So what we're going to do is we're going to trade Day'Ron Sharpe to Orlando. I don't remember how exactly I had these picks set up in that scenario. So let's trade the 33rd pick to Orlando. I think I sent them to 43. I'm going to send the 43 to Orlando. And then Minnesota's going to get some seconds because the prize here for Brooklyn is Julius Randle. Orlando is going to send Jonathan Isaac and Wendell Carter to Minnesota. So in this scenario, Minnesota would ideally want a third team involved here. I forgot to renounce their free agents. Ideally, Minnesota would want a third team involved here. They don't want to take on the Jonathan Isaac contract. But if you're trading Rudy Gobert and trying to get like Kyrie Irving or Zion or whoever you name here, you would get a fourth team involved anyway. You would want to dump that Jonathan Isaac contract on them, which would essentially just be an $8 million expiry. So it still shows as 14.5 in the trade machine, but you don't have to guarantee more than the guaranteed money. It would just only count as $8 million in the trade. But why that's okay is the Magic are shedding salary, so they don't need it for matching purposes. So what we're doing here in this three-team trade is the Nets are acquiring Julius Randle. They're trading Day'Ron Sharpe in 5 second-rounders. Day'Ron Sharpe is going to the Magic, where they save $19.5 million. It is an expiring contract, so you get to go into this year with Sharpe, Batazza, and probably bring back Mo Wagner as your three-headed center monster. They would all be on expirings, I do believe. I don't think Batazza has another year on this contract yet. So you'd have 3 expiring, so you can just kind of reevaluate next offseason who's worth paying, who's worth keeping around. In Minnesota, you replace Julius Randle with Wendell Carter, which is kind of a step ahead because you're probably going to trade Rudy Gobert for a guard. So this is your replacement for Rudy Gobert. And then you get 4 second-rounders. All right, I'm going to end this here. This video is going to be going pretty long. So we'll jump in next time here with the Nuggets. And so we got to wrap this up. And then potentially Sacramento and